Hello and welcome to this episode of the Hot Mic on NewsX. I'm Rishabh Gulati and with us is the Finance Minister of the Union of India, Nirmala Sitharaman ji. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us on NewsX. Ma'am, let me just dive in. Now there is now an infamous comment by a certain former overseas Congress chief now, Sam Pitroda. I'm sure you've heard it about people who live in the Northeast, and he says people who live in south of India who look like Africans. Now, as a Tamil, how do you feel?
Well, I'm outraged by the statement. I did tweet my thoughts just a couple of hours afterwards. See, I see that symbolic of everything that the Congress does and speaks about. They look at India in pieces. They look at India in parts. And then they say we are all together. That itself is the route to division. That itself is the route to open up fault lines. That approach of Congress, which gets covered in the name of idea of India, is itself faulty. You really cannot. And unless you change the way you look at India, way Congress looks at India, you're not going to be able to see one country which aspires to reach better position. And all our efforts should be to make sure that every part of India develops, the benefits of development reach all of us, and no one region is left to languish. Now, if you start taking that approach, which is the approach of Prime Minister Modi, that we work for every region of India, everybody contributes, we need to increase everybody's share in the contribution, and so on. Now, so repeated statements coming from Congress or its sympathizers or its mentors only reinforce this thought that idea of India is to aggravate the fault lines, which is just not right.
It's not just that, because right before that, now the Congress has disowned it, but right before that, he came up with this theology around inheritance tax. Now, subsequently, the conversation is no, this is not an official policy. But do you think that a concept of an inheritance tax, even its conversation, would trouble a lot of people, especially in the middle class?
Yes, it is going to trouble, there's no doubt about it. But instead of saying, no, we are not in favor of it, the redistribution of wealth, instead of coming out clearly saying we're not in favor of that, but we are in favor of this, and state out what you want to do, the Congress is only saying this and that and this, and confusing it further. What would it take the Congress just to say, no, we are not bringing the inheritance tax? No, we are not planning any redistribution of wealth. Why won't they want to say it? And then to just cover themselves up, they would say, tell me which part of my manifesto states that. We have not said it in the manifesto. Some part of the manifesto says one thing, some other part says a second thing, a third one says a third thing. All put together leads to this part which gets aggravated by election time public address of senior Congress leaders, inclusive of their former president, wanting to x-ray Indian society and x-ray also to see who's holding so much wealth or who's holding how much wealth. Now, do you just confine yourself to ambiguously worded manifesto? Or do you also take the election time narrative which the leaders are putting forward? So manifesto plus the election time narrative, speeches of eminent leaders of Congress, interview to media by the Congress, all seem to be going in one direction. Inheritance tax, redistribution of wealth, census of Indian societies, assessment of who owns how much. That is where the whole frightening thing lies.
So you see an ideological difference. So what is the difference? Because other than my taxable income, which is the business of government, I don't think anybody, especially in the middle class, wants to discuss even with their neighbors what their assets are rather than see an X-ray. So is there an ideological difference when it comes to X-ray and redistribution?
I'm not sure if I'll call it even as an ideological difference. It's objectionable. How does Government of India get the authority to X-ray or scan how much you're earning when earning is permitted per law? It's not stealth. It is not exploited income. It is not robbery that middle class has done to earn something and later be told that's robbed the money, so I'm going to take it away from you. This approach is going in that direction, that I'll scan how much wealth you have and then I'll take away, like, slicing off one portion of a vegetable or something and say I'm going to do something with it. It's objectionable. By law, people can earn, make profits, save some money, buy assets, hold wealth, and if anything, pass the wealth on to their children or to their progeny or to anybody else. Why would the Congress suddenly want to do it? And to also later be told, oh no, it was the Congress party which removed the inheritance tax. People have questioned it and they can always come up with an answer, and I don't know whether the questioning is in terms of time is right. Apparently it was removed. I'm yet to check it, but it was removed after Mrs. Gandhi's
Immediately
death,
after, yes.
when the properties and the estates were to move to the grandchildren. So it is all right for you to remove it and then benefit by having the wealth transferred to yourselves. Whereas when it is being held by others, you're saying now you want to redistribute it.
So, okay, so there is redistribution, there's welfare, of course. It's difficult to find the line.
No, it is not.
Where is the line? Where do you see the line between welfare?
Redistribution aims at taking away monies earned by law without any other justification to redistribute it to others who have not earned it. Whereas when you take it in the form of a tax, which is what the Congress used to do, 90% tax on people who earned their money. 90. So you earned 100 rupees, 90 would go in the name of tax. And then you give it a shape of a welfare scheme and other things, that 90 be spent on poor people so that you're removing poverty or giving them money, which they didn't succeed at all. This is not that. If you want to tax wealthy more, say so. And that is taking money from them in the name of tax. And after that, per the parliament, where you'll go with proposals and say, I'm going to bring this scheme, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, state it in your budget and do it.
Okay.
This is not going in that route. It just says, I'm going to take away this wealth and redistribute it.
Okay.
I'm sure they will redistribute it in the name of something. But taking away wealth means clearly telling people that you can't afford to make money legitimately, save money legitimately, hold wealth legitimately.
You find that dangerous. So what should be the philosophy of taxation? Because I'm sure there was a temptation in some quarters.
I'm sorry, I don't want you to give it the sanctity which legitimate taxation will give for any proposal. But in this day and age, I thought all of us are screaming for, please reduce tax. Middle class has been telling me.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. So do you see tax rates going down or going up?
No. So are you telling me when it comes to the Congress, you're asking me to say, no, but they're going to take this money and give it for poor? Whereas when you want to ask me, a representative of the BJP, when are you going to reduce it because the middle class want it? Where is this hypocrisy? Media can't afford to nurture this hypocrisy. Ask the same question to both. Get different answers because that comes from a different ideology. I come from a different ideology. Whereas the question changing as per ideology, I'm sorry, you're not playing an observer's game, a journalist's game.
So
a question suitable to Congress, to them, a question suitable to me is not favoring me or them.
We are often accused of exactly the opposite. Okay, but ma'am, the other issue has been on minority quotas. It's become a linchpin of this conversation. It's become a linchpin of the elections. In fact, the Congress would say a linchpin of their plans ahead. When the Prime Minister is saying, when he said in Parliament, a new secularism, sabka saath, sabka vikas, this is equality for all. How does then that model differ from a quota-based model? And is it something that you feel that is palatable for India?
See, reservations in this country by our constitution is definitely given for socially and economically backward people, particularly the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes. And that reservation continues, will continue, and there is no second thoughts on that. That will certainly be continuing because that is the feature with which affirmative action was shown by our constitution, and we are very much on its side. But the Constitution of India does not allow any kind of reservation based on religion. Now, if immediately people are going to tell me, are you therefore denying reservation for some people just because they belong to a particular religion? But the existing scheme of reservation also includes economically backward of the minorities as well. And when I say minorities in specific, because repeatedly concern will be raised only on Muslims, I'm saying even some backward Muslim communities are included under economically backward, and some of them come under the categories of backward, and therefore they are given. But that is given because they are economically backward, not because of their religious affiliations. Constitution does not allow it to be given by religion.
Ma'am, we've not come across in 10 years of a single report thus far, anecdotally or otherwise, of any Muslims being denied access to government schemes or a house or a toilet primarily because of religion. Have you been able to communicate that effectively? That, listen, when we came up with the slogan, we meant it and named the place where a community is saying that we have been disparaged against because of our religion. In fact, contrarily, there are plenty of case studies to tell you that the houses and the toilets and others have been built.
Yes, they have been given to all communities. There's not been one differentiating element in it. Everybody gets it. And the true principle of sabka saath, sabka vikas has been seen in the way in which these schemes have been implemented. Now, whether we have communicated effectively on it, we would only go on saying it's reached everybody. Now, if you're going to aggravate the problem by saying, whether that reaches me or not, I want reservation to be given to a particular community, that's where the problem arises, because we are looking at taking development to the doorstep of people. Whereas here, development or no development, I want to appease them by saying, I will give you reservation in jobs. I will give you reservation in government. So the appeasement route is the one which makes them speak that I will go by reservation, rather than tell them that you've got as many of these critical elements of basic living: house, sanitation, water, electricity, cooking gas, skilling, roads, school education, insurance, medical, 5 lakhs under Bharat Ayushman program. So we are looking at benefits of development reaching everybody, and the poorest of poor, irrespective of their religion, get their free food grains. Now, if this is not leading people towards sabka saath principle and development benefits reaching everybody, and that is what we are talking about. Whereas if the whole narrative is, you belong to a particular community, I want to protect you by giving only reservation to you, but I'm never going to be able to deliver on this. I can only speak of what I've done in the past 10 years. And that's there for everybody to see, as you rightly pointed out.
I mean, the PM has called for introspection on this recently, and of course, he defined it as new secularism in Parliament. So let me take it to the obvious corollary to this. When the former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh said that a particular community should have first access to resources, do you think he said it because that was something he thought of and it was his thought process, or do you think he was probably asked to say it?
I suspect he wanted to keep in line with the appeasement, vote bank politics. So he went along with his party.
Ayodhya, ma'am, as we speak, has become the largest religious tourism site in the world. 150,000 people are arriving every single day. The Chief Minister of UP says it's already had an impact on GST collections in the past 1 year in UP. They're up 20%. What is just the economic potential of these religious tourism hubs like Ayodhya, which are being created?
See, if I just go back a little bit, even when there was just no facilities, no infrastructure, no roads, no safety in roads, no staying or accommodation or anything, people would just go and stay in what sarais, just rain basera types. And people in India have moved around to going to holy places. But today's young Indians, who also want to continue that tradition, wonder why these places wouldn't have the basic infrastructure. So, in the last 10 years, you would see the way in which infrastructure has been ramped up all over the country. And simultaneously with that, beneficial and useful policies have helped hospitality sector, transport, air travel. There is a clear understanding in the minds of people, middle class largely, that it is very conducive for families to travel. And when this interest in different iconic centers has been increased because of government's tourism related policies, there is definitely a favorable impact on tourism. People are now feeling that it's no longer like yesteryears when people had to go stay in not good places because there were no hospitality, no hotels, no caterers, no arrangement. Today, the world is very different within India. So, domestic travel, particularly to religious places, places of spiritual value, is rightly seeing a boom because people can expect certain facilities and they're getting it there. So this was waiting to be done for a very long time. I'm happy PMS really brought the emphasis on this.
Okay, ma'am. I'm going to ask you a question, and I know it's not particularly regarding your portfolio, but Mani Shankar Iyer. Now, 2 elections ago, he made a comment about Chaiwala. Then he spoke about Neech Jati. Now he says, be respectful towards Pakistan. They might nuke you. We've already discussed Sam Pitroda. Are these people just people talking, or what is going on? Are these a group of mentors you suspect? How do you observe these individuals? They've held positions of very important positions in the past. What do you make of comments like this?
That has been the mindset of those people, and that's been the mindset of Congress as well. If your understanding is that you have to go on bending backwards just because you have to maintain a relationship with the neighbor and not pursue on national interest, even on matters related to national security, that is exactly what they were doing during their period. Dossiers after dossiers, when the evidences were black and white and available, you could not pursue them to even take one action. Till today, the perpetrators of Mumbai attack are still roaming free in Pakistan. We may say 1,000 things about the entire judicial process in India. It consumes a lot of time, deferments happen in the court, and then from one court to another, lower to higher, higher to going to Supreme Court, all consumes time. But we still have delivered justice from our end. But justice about the perpetrators getting the punishment has not happened because Pakistani courts are not moving forward. And when you therefore take stern action, the mindset of the Congress and the leaders of Congress who constantly determine our foreign policy speaks the language of the terrorists and Pakistan rather than the language of India.
Okay. Coming back to an earlier conversation and whether there's an ideological difference or a philosophical difference, let me take a case in point. Now, your government has come up with the concept of Lakpati Didis. And the approach is that we will empower women with some kind of skill, maybe a drone or something, and allow them to earn a lakh. The Congress says we're going to give a lakh in their manifesto. And it sounds tempting for a lot of people. Is it physically possible? Is it possible for them to make that promise? Is there sound mathematics that you can see behind it?
I'm asking this question. Did he tell us for how many women he is going to give it? 1 lakh per woman. But for how many women? Assume he is giving it even for 20 lakh women. How much is your revenue collection today? If you distribute it, I'm not saying people should not benefit from some scheme. Please, if the scheme has got to benefit people and if the mandate is given to the party, that will happen. But I just want to know what is the homework, even a back of the envelope work, if done by the Congress. Will first of all tell me for how many such women he wants to give this. Assume it's 10, assume it's 20, that much lakh is going out. How much are you collecting in terms of revenue today? Even with all the improved, better GST central portion of the tax, what you get? How much of income tax are you getting? How much of direct tax other than income tax are you getting? So if your one scheme, however nobly intended it may be, is going to drain the resources, very well, I don't even want to use the word drain. If it is going to take away that much money for that one scheme, let the Congress party tell us what is it that they are going to do with other people for whom they want to give something. And leave the roads, leave the connectivity, leave developmental programs, leave all that. So, is there any mind application? Or is it just going to be, I'll do what I wanted, just as during the lockdown, Congress party, its economists, its also economists come mentors, had all asked us to print rupee, print money. Print as much as you need, print. Reminding us of those days when the deficit was financed by printing notes, thereby worsening the situation even more. So, are they indicating that for us who took a targeted approach during COVID, for us who've been responsible in dealing with taxpayers' money and making sure that every rupee goes for and fully goes for, not 15 paisa to a rupee, fully goes for those who need to get that benefit. After all these efforts, are they indicating that they care nothing for fiscal discipline?
Okay, ma'am, let's just look ahead for a bit, because it's an important thing for people to digest that the two biggest drains on exchequer, which is where we lose money, is energy, importing oil, and of course importing weapons. Now, we are in a position, ladies and gentlemen, where we've just started, ma'am. We've had a BrahMos deal. We are about, I'm told, almost self-sufficient domestic on ammunition. We have met and exceeded our 20% ethanol target. Just in the past week, we've become the third largest solar power generator in the world. Now, I know there are lots of things, but in the end, it boils down to the mathematics that you deal with the two biggest revenue items, defense and import of oil. Are we looking at a potential future where actually you can earn money from defense and it flips?
20,000 crores have been earned from defense exports. We were the country, the second largest importer of defense equipments, today is exporting defense equipments. And as you rightly pointed out, we are not even saying that for the next few years we need to import munitions at all. We are self-sufficient in it. So, with the visionary approach, we are now stopping imports of even defense equipments. And we've been careful about the way in which from where we are importing crude oil. We saw, even during the worst sanction period, we thought the cheapest available is what I need for my country, and we brought that in. So every aspect of the economy has been looked at as to how fully and optimally we'll use every rupee of the tax-paid collected money. That is how far mind application has been done so that the economy is not burdened by any small, look the other way and allow something to happen here, later realize that could have been done better. That is the extent to which Prime Minister himself says, be careful about what you're doing. Every rupee should earn bang for the buck.
Okay, PM has mentioned this specifically in the past on kerosene and mentioned it in detail. You've also mentioned this just on efficiencies. By cutting down waste that is taking place in the system, DBT, of course, has played a large advantage to it. How much do you think we've saved, that the government has saved just on efficiencies and things that were just going missing, disappearing?
I roughly would put it, of course, the number keeps improving a bit, roughly more than 2.5 lakh crores because of DBT. We could save on all the, and Aadhaar linked DBT. When I say just Aadhaar is not Aadhaar bridge, which in the name of one person, if there is an Aadhaar account, and with the same person having another account, money doesn't go to two accounts. So in very many different ways, Aadhaar using accounts are also double checked if for duplication. So that way, Aadhaar enabled bridge is through which the money goes. So many of the duplications which may occur have all been weeded out. As a result, that is the kind of money which we have saved. No wonder we are able to do more in terms of schemes which can benefit the poor.
So then, ma'am, the obvious big ticket question, are we looking at potential double-digit GDP growth? How soon can we get there?
We're working. Let's see. I don't want to speculate.
So around 8% right now. Is it achievable?
Double digit.
We are at around 8% in the last quarter. Is it achievable? 10%?
Well, let's hope.
Okay. I want to ask another efficiency-related question because in the past we've seen project delays, right? You start something and it never finishes. Land acquisition has been a fundamental problem. Now we have gone year after year after year. We've not seen any land protests like we used to see in the country in the past. Parliament was built in under 2 years, which is a phenomenal project. People take longer to build their houses. What is this Gati Shakti concept that you're working on, which is, I think we are still trying to understand. What is this?
Gati Shakti is absolutely a fine instrument which brings in efficiency, not just of work efficiency, but material product efficiency, because it has built into it several layers of filters and tests. If the location itself brings in advantages, if there is a standalone which is not connected to anything, which has a huge big industry, but you have to now connect it to port, now connected to airport, now connected to a habitation from where workers would come, and so on. So the essential conditions to make your infrastructure spending or your decision to establish a productive unit should all go together and not be done in isolation. Now, when this PM Gati Shakti was brought in, the initial feeding into it showed how many such places where earlier, over the 50 long years, several projects were done. That's why sometimes when the opposition tells us, give us credit, we've also done it. I want to use this example to tell you. Such units were established in such places which also need to develop, but which had no connection whatsoever to the raw material source, or to the exportable port source, or to a habitation from where workers could be drawn in, or to the source of electricity, and so on. So, you build a railway station, but you're not able to reap the benefit of a connectivity, a railway line passing through it, so that the local produce get onto it and reach cities. None of this has been done in a holistic fashion. What PM Gati Shakti gives us is a dashboard which has so many layers to test as to where the hindrance is, or where the disconnect is, or where actually the optimal point lies if you're able to benefit from it. So you're able to, much before you even conceptualize something, you have all these filters before you, and therefore you can take a decision.
After having spent all our lives of somebody building a road, then somebody coming and digging it up a few days later to lay a line. Okay, I have to ask you the obvious question, ma'am. Fifth largest GDP, fourth, third, very nearby, Is it conceivable?
Absolutely.
Maybe in the very near future?
Absolutely. That is why Honorable Prime Minister was very confident much before the elections were notified, much before the code of conduct. He said, give me a third term, I'll show you that India's economy will be the third largest. For a Prime Minister to state that, would he say it if he didn't have the confidence? After all, in the 10 years, from the 10th rank, we've reached the 5th. And it was sometime very amusing when former finance minister said it is an arithmetic inevitability. It'll happen. You don't need a magic wand. It'll happen now automatically. I'd like to remind him. They themselves said not till 2038 or something can we reach the 5th rank. We've reached it already. Your estimate was that much if it was arithmetic inevitability, whereas it has been achieved much before that. And again, 2004 to 14, hardly 2 ranks improved. So if it is an inevitability, why couldn't it reach that level even earlier? That's the speed at which inevitability will result. So I'm sorry, it is possible. We've done the work that we have lifted the economy from 10 to 5. Now we'll lift it from 5 to 3.
Okay, Viksit Bharat. What does a Viksit Bharat look like? Does it mean 100% saturation of the schemes? Everybody has a house, everybody has a toilet, or does it mean roadways? Does it mean bullet trains? Does it mean, I don't know, flying cars? What does Viksit Bharat mean?
It means almost all that you're saying. I'm not talking about flying cars or what. It means that India where you can be leading a dignified life. You don't have to go into the deep jungle to relieve yourself. You don't have to go miles to get drinking water to your house. You don't need to have to search for a hospital to admit your senior citizens at home. You don't need to say, I don't have the money to treat myself. You'll have medical cover. So it is certainly an India where basic amenities will definitely be reaching saturation. Not till 2047, we'll reach saturation much earlier. In most of these schemes where provision of house, provision of electricity, water to the house, we are close to saturation. So taking India beyond that, improving the income earning potential for people to do businesses, for better connectivity, for better futuristic industries, for pollution control, renewable energy, leading in AI, also having some of the frontier industries, your space, being a leader for space technologies for the world, not just for Indians. Every one of these.
Okay, speaking of future technology, semiconductors, a big push by government. We see now foundation stone laying starting. Space policy has been introduced. Now there are dozens of private space players. AI, of course, everybody talks about. Lithium batteries we've just started production in India. Where do you see the fillip in these industries?
Green ammonia, green hydrogen, all that is happening. Investment from private sectors happening in all these areas. So yes, so we have given production-linked incentives for many of these sectors. They will bring in that change, and after a few years, they'll be able to sustain themselves and be able to produce for India and also to export. So we'll also be giving emphasis for manufacturing in India, not just for Indian market, but also to produce here and to export. So the emphasis for agriculture, emphasis to get a lot back into manufacturing, whether it is the API for pharmaceutical industry, whether it is the renewable, we are getting back a lot of areas in which India had some initial advantage. We lost them. We're getting them back now. But therefore, manufacturing will get its strength and equally further support the service sector, which already contributes nearly 60% to our GDP.
Ma'am, the big debate that happens is how do you assess what is job generating growth?
Well, it is also something which even before we go to the cabinet with a proposal, as it is even now, the question on how many direct and indirect jobs will a proposal create is discussed in the cabinet. It is only after that any proposal gets cleared. So the attention for each one of the proposals which come to the cabinet is from the point of view of job creation as well.
Okay, ma'am, we are short of time, so I'm going to end it on this thought because you've written a long post on this very recently about public sector units. So there's been a lot of conversation about, public sector units being privatized over the Indian Airlines. People forget that it was highly loss-making. What is the status of PSUs and what prompted you to actually write a long post on this?
So only because brazen attempts at misleading people is happening. Just before the 2019 elections, there was a lot of noise about how Hindustan Aeronautics Limited has been denied orders and it's being given a stepmotherly treatment. Nothing is happening about HAL. Today, HAL is one of our leading PSUs where the government has given orders for building of futuristic Tejas. More than 80,000 crore orders are with them. And their valuation has gone up so much. So is the valuation of each one of those public sector undertaking with Government of India. So disinvestment is one thing where you go to the market and sell it off. But you sell it off at what rate? Whether you sell it off or not, at what rate is it now? And are we letting those which are not yet to be sold to languish? Are their valuation not also going up? So the thought behind that post was to say that when we have disinvested, taking the example of Air India and NINL, that for the economy, we require more airlines to serve India. We also require a lot more integrated steel units for India. And if it is better served by being disinvested, we'll be quite happy to do that. It's not with an intention of shutting these units that they are disinvested. And by disinvestment, we have not looked the other way when jobs are being thrown out. Every job has been kept, and that's been one of the conditions with which the disinvestment happened. And in fact, numbers have gone up after disinvestment because capacities are going up. So I wanted to post this saying what happened to disinvested companies, what conditions have been attached to their disinvestment, and equally for those which are not disinvested yet, what is their valuation today? We've been giving attention even to them.
Yeah, well, in some cases, 3 times, 5 times the valuation.
That's right.
Ma'am, we've covered a lot in 30 minutes. Thank you so much for joining us on the Hot Mic here on NewsX. Keep watching.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.